So when people say people over process, a lot of times, there's a whole can of worms under what they're saying, right? Like you say people over process, and it's like, well, we don't feel like we're being entrusted to do a good job. Yeah, that's obvious. Or we think the process is too heavy. But what we really need to do is get down to the details of what's wrong. Like, what is it causing them to feel this way? It's very easy for people to say people over process because it's an agile principle. It's one of the agile values. There's 4 core values. People over process is the first one. It's the one that people remember the most because it really kind of clarifies what we value, right? We value people over process. Process is important, but people come first. Developers on a project are saying people over process. What we want to do is figure out what are they trying to say, right? And as a developer, if you find yourself saying people over process, it's really important to ask yourself, why do you feel that way? What are the things that could be going wrong? So what are some of the things that go wrong? Well, what are some of the things that make people feel that way? One, I would say, is they don't feel entrusted to do good work, right? Something's kind of preventing them from doing work the way they want to. Maybe there's some process hoops they have to hop through. Maybe they do work and then it's reviewed and then they have to go change everything after that review process. A lot of times it's just not having time to develop. When we look at a 40-hour week, typical work week, when a developer is working, they want uninterrupted time to actually do their work. I want a 4 or 5, 6 hour block of time where I can just sit down and do the work that's been assigned to me. But if I work an hour and then I have a meeting, and then after that meeting I'm trying to get back into that same phase I was before, it's like, well, you work an hour, got a meeting, work an hour and a half, and everything's broken up, so I can never really feel that flow, really feel like I can get things done. And so a lot of times what people are saying is, I don't have time to do my work the way I want to. The work that I'm doing isn't being valued. I'm not being entrusted to own the way I do work. So when you look at like management layer, director layer, what do you want to find out about when people are saying this? What are you trying to find out? You're trying to find out, is there something wrong with the process, right? When people say people over process, sometimes it might mean that we don't own our process. Our process is dictated to us. And one of the values of Agile is being able to reflect and iterate and make your process better and more suited for the team. Every team might find a different process is working for them. If I'm a team of DevOps engineers, Kanban is going to work really well for me because I'm having a lot of stuff come in and we need to sort through those priorities frequently. I don't have the luxury to think 2 weeks in advance. I might be thinking 2 hours in advance, if I'm a DevOps team. If I'm a development team, I might want that 2 block. I might want Scrum because I want a 2-week uninterrupted window to just do work that we said, this is the priority at the beginning of the 2 weeks. We're going to do that without any changes in priorities. And so for a developer or somebody who's working on a software project, having the ability to sit down and say, this is the process that's working for us is a very important part. And if the process is being dictated to them, then they're going to feel like they don't have control over the process, and the process might feel like, hey, you're putting the process first and you're trying to slot people into this process. People should have a little bit of ownership over the process that they're using, right? That's a really important tenet. So if we look at people over process, one of the confusing things I think people have when they're first introduced to Agile is people over process to them makes it sound like process is bad. People are most important. Process, we want as little process as possible, and that's not the case. When the Agile Manifesto was written, the writers sat down and they said, look, process is important, but when it comes to a conflict between people and process, we're going to trust people, right? We're going to find good people, we're going to trust them to do a good job, we're going to trust that they have the right intentions and are going to do the right thing that they think is the right thing for the job, right? And so when we talk about people and process, people come first, process maybe is second, but that doesn't mean process is not important. So if we look at the time aspect, jumping ahead, we're looking at the time aspect, developer has a 40-hour work week. If we look at some processes like Scrum, what does Scrum come with? Well, Scrum has, Scrum is great. It's very prescriptive, but it's very lightweight. It's maybe not the most lightweight thing you can do, but it's something where you're saying, all right, we're going to do daily stand-ups. 15 minutes, no problem. It's a great way to get people going, touch base. You don't have people isolated for a long time without talking to others. do get a backlog grooming meeting. You know, you're sitting down, you're looking at what are the priorities, what are the things we're going to be working on in the future. Okay, that's great. Maybe that's an hour every couple of weeks. Then you got a sprint planning meeting. Sprint planning meeting, 1 hour every couple of weeks. Sit down and say, hey, these are the things that we need to work on. Does this still make sense? Are we ready to work on these things? Who's working on what? Let's get things kicked off. Retrospective, right? Maybe 1 to 3 hours. Sit down, reflect on the process, try to find things that are working better. And then a sprint demo maybe at the end. So you got, maybe a couple hours for that. So already with Scrum, very lightweight process. Maybe you're only meeting like 3 to 4 hours a week just for the process, right? So that's 10% of your time. You're investing 10% of your time in making sure we're working on the right things. Everybody has what they need, and we're able to move forward effectively. And that's great. Like, that's Scrum, very lightweight. It's not the most lightweight thing, but at the same time, it's a minimum set of activities to keep the development process moving smooth. Well, we have that as kind of our standard. Scrum, everybody knows Scrum. A lot of people have kind of implemented it and do it well. But then, now let's say we have multiple teams. Let's say we have distributed teams. We have teams in different parts of the world, and we want to coordinate all this effort in between multiple teams. Well, now we take Scrum, like that's the base. We have 4 hours, 10% of our time is already invested in meeting. And let's add on, a few other kind of coordinating events. Let's maybe plan multiple sprints in advance. Let's take a look at dependencies between teams, and you look at some of the scaled frameworks for Scrum and Agile, and all of a sudden you're adding a few more things. Like, well, we're going to take another 10% to coordinate with different teams. So now we got 20% at the time. And this is just for the development process, right? We work in companies. You have company update meetings, right? You have town halls. You have, all sorts of meetings where you're actually sitting down getting updates about what's going on in the company. And so now maybe that's like another 10, 20%. All of a sudden, it's very easy to get into that point where half of developers' time is already being taken up by process, company, organization, department level things. And so we're saying right off the bat, before a developer can even sit down, half of their time is taken away, right? Half of their time is already eaten up. And that's before they need to talk with POs and product owners and business analysts or QA or whatever to even do their work, talk to architects, right? So now all of a sudden we're looking like, how much time does a developer actually have to sit down and do their work? Is it 10 hours a week? Is it 20 hours a week, right? Can we get them up to 30, 35? If we had Scrum and we had no company meetings, we had no other coordination, 35 to plus hours a week, I can get some work done. Like, it's no problem. If I got a small team, I'm working on a small project, there's no question I can do things and get it done and be effective. But if we look at a large organization where I have multiple teams, I have department level stuff, there's a lot that needs to be communicated to everybody in the organization. All of a sudden, it's like each developer having this project, a lot of that time is just getting eaten up. And that's before, they even have to coordinate with this work that they're actually doing, trying to find out requirements for the work they're doing. So that's the time aspect, right? We're looking at protecting people, giving them ownership, protecting their time, making sure that, they are not interrupted. They have a process which gives them control over the work that they're doing. They're able to complete it without interruption. Right? So that's what the balance looks like. So what happens is when people say people over process, there's something interrupting that balance. Either they don't have the time, they don't have the ownership, the process is not working for them, it's too heavy. Maybe there's not a lot of meetings, but the meetings are scheduled in such a way where they don't have big blocks of time to actually sit down and do work. Right? So that's what happens when people say people over process. At the manager or director level, you need to figure out like what's actually interrupting them. The developer level, sometimes you can solve this on your own, right? You have a team, you have a process like Scrum, which says we have retrospectives every 2 weeks. If we're feeling in our retrospective that some developers saying we're not valued as people over process in this case, it's like, well, you need to ask yourself why. As a developer, why is that? Do we not have ownership over our process? Are we being dictated what process we have to follow? Do you not have the time to do the work you need to do? Does it feel like the work that you're doing is not being valued, right? Get down to the actual details of what's actually going on.